Hello and welcome all of you to my YouTube channel Animals and Pets with Partha. Today I take you back to the 70s, the dog game of the 70s. It is the time when I came to the game. At the time, the Indian dog game was very small and restricted to some of the major cities in the country only. We had, of course, Calcutta, which was the oldest dog club in the country, and then we had Bangalore and Mysore and Mumbai, and we had South of India Kennel Club in Uttarakhand, Chennai, and so on and so forth. So it was only a few dog shows that we had in a year, and we had some of the finest judges judging those dog shows. Then when we started growing actually in the city of Calcutta, at that time in Calcutta there were two clubs. There was the Indian National Kennel Club, which held fantastic shows, which was held at the St. Paul's Cathedral Lawns, and we had the Calcutta Kennel Club, which was held at the Calcutta Kennel Club tent on the Maidan, which was once the jewel in the crown of the British Raj. And so the shows, of course, was really outstanding and very well organized dog shows that we used to have in those days. And the judges were handpicked from India. They were very aristocratic people who were judges. There, of course, the names of likes of Maharaja Jaideep Singh of Baria, which comes first, and then we had the Nawab Nazir Yat Jung. Then we had Prince Ahmed Hussain coming from the UK all the time to judge in India, because he spent in the winter months when it became very cold in England. He used to come down to India and spend his time in showing his beautiful Cocker Spaniels in India, and also judging a lot of dog shows. Then we had, of course, Mr. R.P. Mitta. Then we had the aristocratic Mr. Ajay Bose, and his brother Dilip Bose was, of course, also a judge, but he belonged to the Indian National Kennel Club. We had these two beautiful clubs that used to organize the shows, and we used to go over to the Indian National Kennel Club shows and enjoy, because there were lovely dogs being exhibited there. In fact, the more elite people of Calcutta at that time used to go to the Indian National Kennel Club. Then, of course, we were, of course, patronizing the Calcutta Kennel Club, and I remember I used to go. I was asked by my bosses, actually, the people who ran the Calcutta Kennel Club, were people like Mr. Nirmal Brahmachari and Mr. Amalendu Roy, Mr. Ajay Bose, and the likes. So, in fact, in those days, we used to go to people's houses and ask for entries of people who had good dogs or pedigreed dogs. We used to go over to their houses and request them to come to dog shows. So, in those days, usually, the very affluent people had top quality dogs, and most of the time they would even send their dogs with servants. So anyway, so that's how the dog game was. And I remember we used to master an entry of 125. Of course, today's people will say, well, we used to get 125, 30, 40 entries today. But let me tell you a bit of history. After the 120, 25, 30 dogs that I used to have in those days, then we started shooting up. We had very few breeds, but then we grew in such a stupendous sort of speed that we used to have the two breeds, that is the German Shepherds and the Dobermans. Put together, we had around 300 dogs, and then the rest of the breed, we were always 500 or more dogs any time. And of course, the choice of breeds was very little. Initially, when I started, there were hardly any Dobermans. Then one or two just started coming in. and then there's just prolific entry. What do you call? The entries just kept growing because there were so many imports that people brought in. The Dobermans was a craze in that time around the world, and because being a very easy care dog, and people started keeping Dobermans. But then they soon realized there were a lot of problems because the males, of course, was very difficult to keep in small houses, and if you could not control the dog, the garner, the temperament of the males could not be controlled, then there would be problems faced by people. But anyway, let's leave that aside and let me go on. So we had some of the finest judges judging, and coming from all across, mostly from England, and then of course we had some of the greatest judges coming from Australia, the likes of W.G. Spilstead. Then we had Jim Mitchell, we had Kevin Percival, we had Bob Curtis, and many others. And of course, they're all dead, and they have been all fantastic judges. History will always remember them as great judges who stepped on this Indian soil. After that, what happened? Then came a phase when we used to get other judges. The later generation, we used to get Dr. Harry Spira, and then we had many other famous judges. David Strachan from Canberra. Then we had Sean Rose from New South Wales, and a lot of judges. Many, just too numerous to name. And most of these Australian judges were fantastic judges. They upheld the standard of the judged to a very high standard. And at that time, I can tell you, the people, the general people who came to dog shows got good, correct assessment from these judges, and they're extremely happy with how the dog game was flourishing, and that's how the dog game grew in leaps and bounds, and it spread to many other cities of this country. Then, of course, you realize that then there came the time of the syndicate, and the syndicate took over the whole thing. And then at this growth that was already in the process, and the dog game was going by leaps and bounds, what happened was, they found a way to make money, and so set up a whole chain of psychophants across this country who actually fixed all the shows. And then, they used to get judges from close by. I wouldn't say that all the judges in Asia are bad, but there are plenty. I don't think they have had the same they come from the same sort of dog background, or they don't share the same Occidental fraternity of the judges that we used to get from England, Australia, New Zealand, America, and the likes. So what happened was, not only this, people wanted, judges, foreign judges, but they should be very, the fare should be very economical. So you would only have to reach out to the neighboring countries. I won't name any country. And of course, the neighboring countries, because they got so much of demand for judges, so they also made a lot of judges. That means they were all they all had all breeds licenses overnight. There are hundreds of judges that you could really reach out and get. But what happened was the, call it bad judging or inconsistent judging, that became the rule of the day. So in those days, when we were showing, I'll tell you, we used to, sit and watch dog shows to learn. We used to see all these great judges judging, and breed by breed, class by class, we would assess and we would every action, every movement, every a decision of the judge, we would very carefully scrutinize, because that was a learning experience for all of us. And it is the passion for which we were learning. It's not that we would we had thought that next day we become a judge and we are, it is first we realized that we have to have the knowledge about dogs. That was so much important to us that we used to watch. Of course, in those days also we would find the odd one who were actually maybe not so well informed or inconsistent with his judging and would make some silly mistakes. And if that happened, we were watching would actually walk away. And later on, amongst us, we would crack a joke. And of course, that judge would never come back to this country again for a dog show. They wouldn't be invited back. The same thing still happens in Australia, in England, and other places. If a judge goes there, you may somehow manage an appointment. But if you go there and don't do what is right, and if you do not justify that you're a good judge, or you judge to the standard, that is most important. It's not your opinion that matters. You have to judge every breed meticulously and to the standard laid down. There is nothing else that matters. So unless you're able to do that, what happens is you're rejected. You're never called back again. Well, I have been extremely fortunate to have been repeatedly called to so many countries over these years, and I'm extremely grateful for to the exhibitors and to the organizers who have called me back. And so it's not that I'm trying to make a point. What I mean to say is what happened later on is the syndicate that took over made sure that whoever judge comes, you have to. Now, if you enter in, means in other countries, like you have the choice. Well, that judge is coming. I'm not going to show my dogs on the roof. That judge, he knows nothing about this breed. But you have the choice. But here, you made sure that, these are the judges coming. And then, if you exhibit in one show, supposing one of the judges you like, you might show. You know that he's knowledgeable. And the other two judges may not be, knowledgeable. So, you know that profile. And you don't want to show. No, you have to enter in all three shows. You are compelled to do it. You have to pay for the entry fees. And not only that, if you make yourself absent also, you will be penalized. So all this. So it was like you would be forced to lose. Because then came the time when, they used to, all the judges, most of the judges, they realized that if they put up dogs that they were asked to do, then they would be given a free holiday. All the travel is paid for, 5-star accommodation, and sightseeing and shopping and everything in India. So the word went around. So most of the judges, out of the 95% of the judges that started coming to India, were all I wouldn't say that they are all bad judges. There have been good judges there also, but they were so greedy to have a free holiday in India that they fell in this trap and became they obliged this syndicate and his sycophants, and that's how the Indian dog game has been killed. And now now to bring back this dog game to its glory is going to take a long time. And I will tell you, there is the pendulum of the type in dog breeds swings to and fro. But those remaining true to the standard finally will triumph in the end. And let me end by saying that only the very few dedicated breeders have the requisite knowledge to restore a breed to its initial form once it hits the bottom. Judges should have the ability to articulate why one dog wins over another. This is the reason they have made terminology common among standards, just to make it convenient for all judges. Well, with these words I'm going to end today, because my video is getting longer, and but what I like to tell you that now if you go to dog shows, if we had those earlier judges like Stanley Dangerfield and Ken Bullock and other people who used to come from England and other countries, they would reject so many dogs. If you look at, I'm just trying to refrain from naming breeds. There are some breeds where there are so many different types of dogs. Well, rather, let me say, two styles of dogs that actually is within a breed. Now, means who is good and who is bad and what should win? Because there is a standard. We all have to judge to a standard. I'll just cite one more example finally and end here. That we had a judge from Holland, Van der Zwaan, who actually the owner of the Lillenstam Kennel. And I was the president of that show. It was the Doberman Preacher Club of India show, and we had the chairman of that, chairman of our kennel control also coming for the show. So it was a big occasion, and it was a big show in Calcutta, and I was fortunately the president. Well, it was a great education for us, because what he judged and what he said, he of course knew his breed extremely well, and he knew his Dobermans by the back of his palm, and he justified why he placed certain dogs over the other. And in that, even the best winning dogs of that time, which fortunately were also owned by me, even some of them, of course, they were in joint ownership, not solely owned by me, but nevertheless, these dogs were also put down to some dogs which were more closer to the standard according to him, and he justified everything. I so much appreciated, even though my dogs lost in that time, or my close friends' dogs lost. I, being the president of the club, I was so happy that here was a judge who spoke out and actually educated the Doberman fraternity in this city of Partha, and of course in the country, because there are a lot of exhibitors who flew down or brought their Dobermans from across pan-India, and we don't see such judges who actually speaks their heart out to the exhibitors, explaining why they put up certain dogs and why they did not put up other dogs.